This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my guest, Vinnie Tolman. Hello, Vinnie.
Hello, Heather. Great to see you again.
It is wonderful to see you again, too. I had such a great time interviewing you quite a while ago, and it was when my podcast was very new. And people loved you. We had a 4-part series, and your episodes have gotten hundreds of thousands of views right now, and people keep asking for more. And so what I want to focus on with this episode is the future, because you did see during your near-death experience future events or potential future events, and people want to hear about that. But just before we get there, I know it's pretty impossible because you have one of the most detailed near-death experiences I've ever heard. But if you could just sum it up in 5 minutes, I know that's impossible, just to give people an overview. You were zipped up in a body bag. You had this amazing experience. Is that something you can do for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, wonderful.
So kind of to synopsize my experience, back in 2003, I was found dead in a bathroom. They put me in a body bag, and we're taking the body to the medical examiner when a rookie medic, who was a brand new medic, he broke protocol, opened the body bag, and tried to resuscitate the body. He was able to do it. Meanwhile, I was witnessing everything. They were able to resuscitate the body. The body was still brain dead, though, for 3 days. And during those 3 days, I was off in what I term the real existence, our real existence. So I got to experience 3 days of our real existence and see what is really in front of us in the future for all of us. But I also got to look at life and why we're here on Earth. So it was a very profound experience. It changed me. I became a different person afterwards. A lot of people who knew me before and know me now, they say that definitely I'm a different person from the experience. And for over 21 years now, I've been going around talking about it. And for the last few years, I did put out a book. So that's kind of why we're having these interviews now is because the book came out a few years ago.
And I loved your book. I have the audiobook, and I've listened to it several times because it is very detailed. And speaking of details, for those of you that are listening, in part 1 of our 4-part series, Vinnie goes into all the details of his near-death experience. And then we go through a lot of Q&A. So I encourage you to watch those episodes, and I will have links to those in the description. But Vinnie, one thing that we covered, and probably for only 5 or 10 minutes, is we talked about some of the future visions that you saw. Now, I realize not all of these are set in stone, but they're potential. But I'm wondering if you could step us through some of the things that you saw for our future, and people do want details.
Absolutely. Now, just to explain how I saw any future, because some people, some people have this glimpse of the future as they come back into their body. Some people don't. So amongst all of us near-death experiencers, there's some of us that do see future events. There's some of us that don't. To explain what happened to me, and I can't say that it's everybody's story, but what happened to me is as I was coming back to my time, and I say time as a selective place to go to because time is selective. Time is only existing here in this space, in this realm. And in kind of a hard to understand way, there's different time in different places, but in the heavenly space or in the eternal existence that we all exist in, there is no time. And so I had to choose to come back to the right time, to come into my body. And as I was being navigated, I wasn't very good at that choice. So I was being kind of navigated through that process. I was seeing into our far distant future, and I was also seeing into our far past. But I was so excited about what I was seeing just in quick glimpses in the future. It excited me. So that's where my attention went. And I only got to see a little bit of it, but it was such a beautiful future that I got to see. the hard part is after I got back, I knew where we were going to be in the long run, and I knew where we are now as a society. And it took quite a while to start understanding how we get from here to there. That was the hard part, is, there is so different than here. Our future is very, very different than here. And it took some dissecting to try to figure out, how is this going to happen? How does it roll forward? The things I can tell you is what it looks like at that future space. And I can speak about that as if it already exists, because it does. I saw it. But how we actually get there, that's up to interpretation. But I feel that within the subconscious of every single one of us who are here on Earth, we already know how we get from here to there. We do.
And the journey may not be pleasant to get from here to there. And so that's one of the things I want to cover. Why don't you start with the good stuff, where we're headed, and kind of give us an idea too of how far out in the future this is?
So it felt 30 to 50 years in our future. And I caught a little glimpse about 100 years in our future. But the biggest glimpse I got was about 30 to 50 years. And again, since there's no time, that's kind of my guesstimate of what I was seeing. And I saw that Earth was very different than it is now. In some major oceans, some major seas, there is now land. And in places there was land, there's now oceans and seas. So there's some major displacements that will happen in this process of shifting or going to this higher place. But in that space, there was communities all over the world, and it felt like almost sacred cities. That's what it felt like. And these sacred cities are dotted all over the world. United States, South America, Europe, Russia, China. They're all over the place, but they're not in the current places that we have major cities. So there will be a process of shifting away from major metropolitan areas and building our own communities of like-minded individuals. I could feel that there was a synchronistic energy about every single one of these cities. And there's a way that they're all connected to each other energetically. And somehow people can go to these cities, experience events and people in these places, and then they can go to another one of these cities by going to a special gate or a special door that connects them to all of them. So because they exist at this higher place, this higher existence, they're connected in some type of energetic network, something bigger and better than what we would call like the internet. But it's even better than that. I would call it the quantum network or the quantum field. And they're able to go from community to community. And in the space, we live very differently. We are now not in a phase of consumption. If you notice that most of the world, we are in a phase of consuming. We consume everything. We consume food, resources, energy, entertainment. We are constantly consuming. And when you look at life and you see something constantly consuming, it's almost like a parasitic type energy. And that's the phase that we're phasing out of now. As a species, as humanity, we are phasing out of the parasitic phase. And we are now lifting ourselves up or graduating into a higher phase. And that's what's happening right now. That's what we're in the process of doing. We're in the baby stages of that now. But in the future, we've made that change. And in this place, we create. In these communities, they create art, poetry, literature, healing techniques, they connect to that quantum field where all knowledge is available to them, and we can kind of unlock all the mysteries of the universe.
It's hard to imagine getting there because right now we do live in a very materialistic society, and many of us are not meditators. We're going, how do we get, from here to what you're talking about? So is this information that is kind of downloaded into us? How do we learn to become these kind of people that there's so much more that's up here and spiritual than it is right now?
Well, it starts with different wake up calls. Before COVID happened, I thought, man, this is really going to be hard. I don't know how we're going to do this. Everybody is in such a selfish direction with all of their consumption, right? It's all about, I'm hungry. It's all about, I'm tired. I've got a headache. And we're thinking from the ego perspective, from I am the center of the universe, or the edging God out perspective. And when COVID happened, it really woke up a lot of people. It kind of broke us out of our rat race, and it forced us to wake up to understanding, are we happy with this phase of consumption, this phase of always needing more, striving for more? Or is there something else out there that can make us feel happy and satisfied, that we don't have to consume, that we can generate ourselves? And that's what we can learn when we meditate, when we go within, when we go into, I like to say that the universe is you inversed, that the way we think that the universe holds all of our solutions and options, all we have to do is actually turn that around to the you inversed. And that's where all the solutions and options actually already exist. Everything that any of us need is right here. And anytime we feel that we need something outside ourselves for happiness, gratification, success, we are fooling ourselves, because happiness, gratification, and success is something you can allow yourself now. You don't have to reach for something or gain something to have it. Allow yourself to have it now, inside. And as you resonate that inside, then it starts to resonate outside without the process of consuming. Yeah.
Vinny, tell me a little bit more about these doorways, because this is really fascinating to hear.
Yeah, so I got to see in that space, there's this really neat technology. I got to see it up close. And I don't know how I got to see it, but I did. I got to see it really up close as I was in that process of my journey. And people in those spaces, they're passionate about history. They're passionate about the future. And they have these crystal tablets. They look like truly a slab of crystal, almost like an iPad, but it's made out of crystal. And they're always on. They must have some type of atomic battery or atomic power source inside. And when they turn on these tablets, or they open these tablets, they will dial in a certain time period, and they can actually put the tablet over their head, and their head actually goes into the tablet, and they will be in the space that they want to be. So if they want to go look at dinosaurs, they can really go be where dinosaurs are. If they want to go look and watch Lincoln give the Gettysburg Address, they can go do that. And they will just appear in space at a higher frequency. So in that timeline, people aren't going to see them, but they can see and experience these grand events. And it runs off of passion. So if you have enough passion, you can function one of these tablets. And it's your passion and your love of wanting to go to that place that allows you to get there. And these gates, these doorways are very much the same, but it takes more than one person to run them. So it takes kind of the community to keep them running, but they run as long as we want to use them. Yeah. And it is a very different space, though. It's such a different space. I didn't see a single store, not one store in the entire community. I saw trading going on, but it was more, I'd love to give you this, and that's it. Nothing needed in return. Like the trading there is just kind of almost a donation energy to each other. Everyone there in that space is that way. I didn't see any currency, not a single way of exchange or currency. I didn't see cell phones. So there's something that happens where we don't need cell phones anymore. And when I asked at a later period how that would happen, and I was shown that all of us have something inside of us that's like a cell phone. And once that gets activated, we now don't need cell phones anymore. We have the ability to instantly communicate to each other across time and space. And we have the ability to download information that we need, but it's all already built into us. And to me, that's something that exists now inside of us. We're just waiting to have it activated. And we're in the process now. I feel that those baby activations are starting to happen for some of us. Yeah.
It's so fascinating. When you talk about these tablets, and you said it's sort of like an iPad, a crystal iPad, do you think it evolves from the current technology, or do you think this is something completely different?
I would feel it's kind of it's a technology that existed before time. And I think our technology is emulating that technology all along. So it's something that was existing, long before modern time came.
Mm-hmm.
As we become ready for that technology to be given to us, or for us to know where it's hidden in the Earth space or in this space-time continuum, as we become ready for it, it arrives. And I feel that our technology is an emulation or a imitating what that technology is. Yeah. And always has been.
Now, you mentioned with this technology, we could go at any time into the past. We could look at something, but we're kind of in a different dimension.
Mm-hmm.
If we are just, say, wanting to travel somewhere across the world, are we going to actually be there physically?
So to explain it, and I actually have a couple of physicists who understand this when I tell them this, there is a common energy in this space and this time now, as there is in our past time and space, and in our future time and space, but also in all the different universes, galaxies, and systems. That common factor is there as well, and it's an energy. And so once you unlock your access to that energy, you're essentially plugged into a network where you can go anywhere, anytime, any place. And that's how these things work. But what's interesting is to get yourself access to that, it takes a very clean, distinct passion with direction. So we have to get very good about discerning and directing our intention, and almost fine-tuning our intention to go to a very specific locale. And when we do, we're able to function and use these things.
So we could go somewhere else in the universe or somewhere else.
Absolutely. Yep. Without using any propulsion systems, we are able to go because that same common energy that exists here is there, and we're plugging into that network, and then we're instantly there. There's a few people that talk about quantum entanglement. They talk about the quantum field. There was some studies done here in the past where a certain individual had a trauma on himself, and he reacted very negatively to certain symbols. And what they found is when they drew his blood and they took that blood and put it 300 meters away, it reacted simultaneously, the same exact moment, to the atomic second. His white blood cells reacted the exact same as it did in his body when he saw the symbols that caused him to feel trauma. They took that same blood and they took it over 1,000 miles away, and it still reacted instantaneously to the very second at the same time as when his body was seeing the trauma now, or seeing his triggers. Now, that's an experiment from that they started in the 60s. They did it in the 70s. They did it in the 80s. We know about this quantum relationship, how something can be connected beyond time and space and distance instantaneously. We're trying to unlock it now in physics, and mathematically we're almost there. Mathematically, it's a proof. We can proof it now, but we can't roll our physiology into it yet. We can see it and we can observe it. We don't quite understand how to direct it yet. And I feel that at a certain enlightenment period, we will be able to direct that.
And it may seem way out there, but I remember hearing some of this in my physics class, which, was 20 years ago or so. So it is quite fascinating. Of course, that's expanded even more. So there's so much that we don't know.
There is.
With these tablets, can we also then go into the future, and can we go into the heavenly realms?
Yes, and anywhere we want to go, as long as our intention can crosshair ourselves or get ourselves with a distinguished destination. Now, if we've never been there, then that's going to be a lot harder. We would almost have to go to someone who's been there to help us triangulate ourselves into that space. But what's very interesting about heaven and anything towards the heavenly space, which there's a lot of different dimensions on your way to the heavenly dimension. To get into each one of those, you have to raise your total energy. You have to raise your frequency, raise your empathic energy, your oscillating frequency as a being has to go up as you go into those higher dimensions as well. So that's going to be a process for us to learn in time. But one of the neatest things is there's been teachers that have come to this earth that have taught us how to selflessly love others and how to serve others, and how even to the point we may sacrifice ourselves for others. And as we follow that kind of love, or selfless sacrificial love, that's the highest energy out there. The service love is the highest energy out there. And that allows us, once we can really get good at that kind of love, that kind of energy, it gives us almost a pass to get up to some of the highest aspects so that we could reach. Yeah.
So tell us a few more things about this future. I think you mentioned in the last episode in the series of 4 that we did, you mentioned there in part 4 that we will be growing our own food. Mm-hmm. But it's not like we grow it now. It's going to be different. Can you tell us more, just things like that you expect, how we'll be living in this 30 to 50 year time range?
Well, in that future, we're very intentional about everything we do. We will put intention into a specific crop, and that crop will produce a different yield because of the intention we put into it. There will also be these certain plants that are oscillating or existing at such a high love energy that when we walk up to them, we will say, I would love to taste this. And the plant will give us that flavor from its fruit. So it's very much a cohesive energy in that space. But also in that space, there's some of us that don't need to eat or drink anymore. And there's some of us that still do, but it's not by need, it's by choice. But it is very different, because someone may be eating because they love the texture and kind of the process of coming together with the plant, or coming together with the food and the molecular biology as it comes into the self, right? And it's more about that coming together, or that communion. That's why they're eating. It's not because they're hungry. It's not because they need it for energy. We learn a new energy system in that space where we don't eat food traditionally. We're able to gain energy from ourselves. We have unlimited energy already inside of us. We have unlimited energy from our mother Gaia or Mother Earth. We also have unlimited energy from the sun. And in that space, there's a way that our bodies are able to capture that energy and sustain themselves without consuming. So it is a very different space. I feel like even the human physiology is very different in that space. So I feel like there's going to be some upgrading, quite a bit of upgrading that happens to us in the process of us moving towards that future space.
So, do you see us with homes or cars, some of the traditional things that we expect in life?
I didn't see any cars per se. I saw some vehicles that were used for personal transport, but they were more for fun than they were for utility. Like I didn't see any utility type movement or transportation vehicles there whatsoever. And I think it goes to those gates that we have. It essentially eliminates the need for moving your physiology from space, from place to place or locale to locale, because those gates allow you to do that without moving without moving your body through space. Yeah.
What about homes?
So Holmes was very different. Okay. I actually pulled this out to show you. So it's kind of funny. They each one of the communities is designed out like the flower of life. So this is a sacred symbol, and not all of them follow this exactly. But what I found is there was domes, like almost like geodesic domes throughout the community. Almost all of them were white. There was a few that were like earth tone tan, some light green ones, but most of them, almost all of them were white. Um, and inside each dome, there was a few very small domes that were kind of like a family structure, but those were for the new people. Once they were part of this community a while, then they would essentially go assimilate into the groups of people that matched their energy. And now, instead of a family being our DNA or our biology, our families became our synchronistic groups. And now people still kept their ties of, hey, that's my biological brother, that's my biological mother, that kind of thing. That continued, but not in the form where all of them went under one house anymore. They would, there was like a dome of healers. There was a dome of artists that were visual artists. There was a dome of uh, um, different energies. Each dome or space had a different energy, and people were going where they felt the most synchronized to their passion and to their own life force. And in that space, they found family. And so in the beginning, you still have these like traditional family ties. But sometimes you'd go in one of these, like you could see in some of these spaces, there was a dad, a mom, two of their kids. They all were in the same space because they were all healers, or they were all empathic scanners. Like they could, empathically scan your physiology and tell you everything that's going on with you, completely replacing the need for like MRI or CT scans or ultrasounds. And it's just using their natural gifts within their body. So it's quite a different space. I didn't see any hospitals. When someone would get sick or break a bone or something like that as an accident, they would take that person that was sick and put them in the main dome in the middle of the community. And then the community would come and gather around them, and they would hold space for them, and they would actually reach out to a future space where that person was healed and whole, and they would invite that future being or future aspect of that being into that space, and it would heal the person that was hurt or sick. And so even healthcare, everything is so different. It's all based off of energy and not off of chemistry. It's all based off of energy. Whereas a lot of our medical system now is a lot chemistry. So much of it's chemistry.
So, what about our lifespans? Because in 30 to 50 years, I'm going to be ending, near the end of my life or already kicked the bucket. So, will people live longer because of this renewal that's taking place?
Absolutely.
So I could still be around for this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, people are going to live a lot longer when we stop poisoning our bodies. If you go in a grocery store right now, around 99% of everything in that grocery store is poison. And I know that that may trigger some people, but I'm not kidding. If you do enough of your own real scientific research on everything in the ingredients in the modern Western diet, 99% of the modern Western diet is poison. And once we stop poisoning our bodies, they are going to live a lot longer. They do live a lot longer. But what I found was very different is in this future space, there was two types of being. There was one being that looked just healthy and amazing and beautiful. But then there was another being that was right next to that one. And they looked just like they glowed, as if light was coming from them. And it took me a while of dissecting of how one was so different from the other. And, you know, this happened after I came back. I was able to understand that what happens is one who is emitting the light, they had already entered their eternal body or their energetic body. And truly the energetic body is the eternal body. That's the soul body or the form of the soul, right? And, we get to do that transition without dying in that space. It's as if you go to bed in physiology and you wake up in energy. And so you make that transition when you're ready, when you've reached the right status with your control of your own energy, you're able to make that metamorphosis or that change yourself. But yeah, in that future space, when you're in the energetic body, you get to live as long as you want to live. You're not limited by time anymore. And in fact, time starts fading and being less important anymore because it's something that we've already mastered with taking honor and care of our energy. Now time is not this clock that's going to run out one day. We get to choose how long do I want to stay in this community? And a lot of us will stay for a while, and then we will jump or we will cross into a higher community somewhere else. And then we'll cross to a higher community and eventually go do the work that we were always planning to do, and we had already contracted to do with the Creator, with Source. Yeah.
Vinny, this future sounds incredible. It sounds amazing, but I know that there are some challenging times to get there, and I would assume there's some sort of a catalyst. But let's go ahead and take that into part 2.
Okay, let's do it.
Well, what are your thoughts? I invited Vinny back because when I did the 4-part series with him, so many of you said, oh, I want to hear more about the future. That's not enough detail. And so I invited him back, and boy, did he give detail. This covers 3 episodes, and everyone is packed with things that we can expect for the future. And in the end, everything sounds like it's going to be amazing, although very different. And different, of course, can be really scary. And I kind of like life the way it is. So it's hard to imagine changing that dramatically in just the next 30 to 50 years. So as we go on from this episode now into the next 2, we're going to talk more about the less pleasant aspects of what is in the future. So in the meantime, I'd love to talk about just, first of all, part 1. What were your thoughts on some of the things he said? Are you ready? Are you willing? He said, go into it without fear, just embrace it. And he says it's going to be great. So I have certainly very mixed feelings about it. I don't look forward to what's going to come before that. And again, we're going to talk about that coming up. So share your thoughts, put it in the comments section. If you liked the video, please give it a like. And if you know someone that wants to hear about the future, please share this with them. I appreciate that when you do. So thank you everybody for being here, and make sure to catch the next 2 episodes. Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to BEYONDwithHeatherTesch to look for more episodes.